What up, cucks? It's your boy, the Hater, up in this piece. I was listening to some good old Run DMC, because that's how the Hater rolls. And I listened to the DX theme song by Run DMC, and it inspired me to do a video. Here's the thing, all right? Let me put it to you this way, all right? By the way, Hater on the road, that's right. Now, as it pertains to WWE stars and wrestling stars, right? A lot of people keep saying things like, oh, this guy is a star. This guy deserves a push. Now, let me tell you something that's already wrong about this, right? If someone is a star, you never have to explain to someone that they're a star, right? No matter what our disagreements may be, the Hater, his fans, and the stragglers that come here to disagree with me all can pretty much agree on a variety of axioms. And I'm not talking about the wrestler axiom, I'm talking about the concept of axioms. Basically, truths, undisputable truths, that's what an axiom is. We know, all of us know, deep inside, that Stone Cold is a star. We all know that The Undertaker player is a star, right? We know that whether we like him or not, Cena is a star, Orton is a star, Roman Reigns is a star, right? We can disagree as to whether they're good stars or bad stars, but we can recognize that the star power is there. The same can be said with people like Braun Breaker. The problem starts, though, when there's disagreements, right? When people say, wait a second, that guy or that gal is not a star, right? Like, most people recognize that Jade Cargill is a star, right? You can argue all day as to whether she's a good wrestler or not, but her star power is undeniable. Now, why is this relevant? Well, the Hater will tell you why it's relevant. It's relevant because when you see someone that is not a star and you basically say that they are, you're just lying to yourself. And when you lie to yourself, you can't then simultaneously be angry that the person that you thought was going to be a star didn't become a star, right? For instance, virtually every wrestler ever that is presented as a mid-carder first is not a star. Now, I know you're thinking, Hater, The Rock was a mid-carder. Hold on now. Stone Cold was a mid-carder. Hold on now. Triple H. Hold on. Shawn Michaels. Hold on. What do they all have in common? Well, when they were mid-carders, they weren't stars, and nobody was clamoring for them to be stars. When Shawn Michaels was just the other guy in the Rockers, and we didn't have the distinction between him and Marty Jannetty laid out before us, he was just another tag guy, right? In other words, at that point, he unequivocally was not a star. You can become a star, right? But in modern wrestling, that's not the case anymore. In modern wrestling, you either are a star or you are not a star. And the same can be said about everybody else. Rocky Maivia was not a star. The Rock is a star. So, while I can concede, for example, that if you took, let's say, Montez Ford, Obafemi, Nathan Frazier, right? If you took these three guys, none of which I think are stars, and you repackage them, then yes, of course. If Nathan Frazier comes back with an awesome gimmick, right? And it turns out he's actually really charismatic and good on the mic, of course he can be a star. But as it stands now, these wrestlers are not stars, right? The WWE has heavily moved away from gimmicks, and it has done so for approximately 20 years, right? Since the introduction of John Cena and Randy Orton, there were no gimmicks. Edge, no gimmick, right? These are wrestlers that have had their entire careers without any gimmicks. Edge, when he was part of the Brood, that was not, a superstar gimmick, so he was a nobody. He was an undercard guy. He was a lackey for Gangrel, who was like, a lower mid-carder. You know what I mean? Then Edge became Edge. Him and Christian had their little stint as a tag team, where they were a tag team, they had a gimmick. Then when Edge became Edge, he was just Edge. Now I know you're thinking, he was the rated R superstar. That's not a gimmick. That's just a moniker. That's like saying Alberto Del Rio is like the Mexican aristocrat, if they call him that, or Nakamura is the artist. These aren't gimmicks, these are monikers. None of these guys have any gimmicks, but some of them are stars. Like Edge, arguably, is a star. Orton is a star. Cena is a star, right? So they become stars. If you have no gimmick, you can never be a star unless you are a star. So that's a great example. You look at Obafemi. If this guy's given a gimmick, he has a much higher potential of being a star. You look at, Nathan Frazier. You look at, Montez Ford. The one thing these guys have in common is that they're decent or above decent in the ring, right? So they have that element that's important. Now they need to get over. And when I mean get over, I don't mean get over like Nakamura got over. I mean get over like Cena got over. Like Orton got over, right? Nakamura comes out, now nobody cares. Like Orton comes out, now the crowd goes wild. And Orton has been booked like shit. He's been booked like Nakamura for the last like few years. But he's still a star. So people resonate with him and relate to him as if he were a star, right? Now, with all that being said, let me go back to the original point of this video. And that is that we all know who is and is not a star. There is no room for debate, right? A star is a star. You know a star is a star because a star is a star. It's as simple as that. You look at the person, you're like, this person's a star. Now, I know that people really have an issue, and you know, to some extent, I empathize with this, right? Because it happens to all of us to some degree, right? They have an issue with separating their own opinions and their own love for something with that of objective reality, right? The hater is a big fan of RPG video games, right? One of my favorite games of all time is called Shadow Hearts and Shadow Hearts 2 Covenant, right? If you haven't played these games on PS2, you do yourself a disservice. They're amazing games. Now, I think these games are vastly, vastly underrated, right? I think that Nicolas Cage as an actor, even though he is a star, is vastly underrated. But this doesn't change the fact that I recognize that Nicolas Cage is not Brad Pitt, that Nicolas Cage is not The Rock, and that Shadow Hearts is not, I don't know, Final Fantasy or Zelda, right? I don't really like Zelda, but I get it. I understand that it's a big game, right? It's a prominent game. People like it, and there's reason why they like it. So that's the problem that I think a lot of people have with wrestling. They see something they like I understand why people like Miro, you know what I mean? I get it. I get why people like Cesaro. I get why they like Daniel Bryan. But this doesn't mean that they're stars. This just means, cucks, that you like them. And that matters a lot. Because that is going to make these people rich, right? If you buy their stuff, if you support them, whatever, these things are going to make them money, right? And they're going to give them some sort of profile. Now, this does not change the biological realities of stardom, right? It is not something you learn. Largely, it's something you have, right? Nobody taught Jade Cargill to be Jade Cargill. She just is Jade Cargill, right? You can take Dean Ambrose, and you can do whatever you want to him, right? But unless he learns how to act, right, and learns how to play a believable gimmick well, he's never going to be a star. And everybody that knows anything about wrestling knew that when the Shield debuted, that the hierarchy clearly was going to be Roman Reigns. He's clearly the star of the group. You don't need to know anything else. You just need to look at them and be like, okay, that's the star. And Seth Rollins and Ambrose are the lackeys, right? They are the jobbers of the team. Then you knew that if two of them were going to become stars, it was going to be Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns. And if three of them were going to somehow become stars, then you knew that, obviously, by process of elimination, Dean Ambrose would have had a chance. Now, take this same axiom and apply it to other wrestlers that you may like or you may hate. You know, look at it, like, use your eyes, right? And understand that just because you think someone is a star, like Gunther is a great example, right? A lot of people think Gunther's a star. A lot of people are wrong. He's never going to be a star. Oh, but Hater, he's the world heavyweight champion. So what? So what? Doesn't mean he's a star, right? Sheamus was the world heavyweight champion. Del Rio was the world heavyweight champion. And none of these guys can be classified as stars. And quite honestly, far better wrestlers have been stars, right? And have not become champions. And far better wrestlers have been champions but haven't been stars than the people that I just mentioned. So, for example, you could argue, like, Kurt Angle. Kurt Angle is not a star, right? Like, I love Kurt Angle, but he's never positioned as a star. He's not positioned the same way that Brock Lesnar is, or Orton is, or Cena is. You know what I mean? That's just how it is. You know what I mean? Like, with all that being said, like, we all know, we can tell when someone is or isn't a star. We recognize these things, cuckolds. It's as simple as that. We all know that the people that we like sometimes aren't stars, right? And that's when we get overjoyed when they win. I'll even give you the ultimate example, right? Christian Cage, my favorite wrestler of all time. I know that he's not a star. I think he has the capacity to be one, and they held him down, right? But he's not a star, right? I never deluded myself into thinking that Christian was a star, right? And I understood why wrestlers that I like less, like Randy Orton, are going to get the push over him. I even understand why Dolph Ziggler is going to get the push over him, right? Even though they're not stars. And I get that. There's nothing wrong with that. Mark Henry is not a star, right? Like I said, Eddie Guerrero is not a star. These are great wrestlers. They're more entertaining. Like Eddie Guerrero, to me, is like 100 times more entertaining than Randy Orton, right? Booker T, he is a star, but, let's say he wasn't. He's still more entertaining, like a lot more entertaining than Randy Orton, right? But I know he's not going to reach the same levels as Randy Orton, right? Because his star power is lower. But he is a star, I would say, right? You can tell. Like think about this. The first time you saw Big Papa Pump Scott Steiner, you definitely thought, this man's a star. You definitely thought that. You're like, holy shit, this is a star before us. Now, I'm assuming you saw him in WCW or something, right? Not if you saw him in TNA. Then you're like, oh, this guy sucks, maybe. But you understand what a star is. And that's the point of this video. Now, we all know what a star is. Nobody has to explain it to you. You just know. And by using this logic, you can quickly cut out from the list Montez Ford, Axiom, Nathan Frazier, Obafemi. These guys are not stars. But doesn't mean you don't like them, and it doesn't mean they're not good. As I just established, sometimes the non-stars are better than the stars. Now, obviously, this is not the case, because in this case, Axiom, Obafemi, Montez Ford, these guys are not stars, and they're not that good. But they could be, right? And that's the idea here. Matt Hardy, I'll use this as a final example. Matt Hardy was a wrestler beloved by everyone. There was a point when Matt Hardy was doing the V1, and he was pretty much carrying the feud with MVP, who pretty much failed immediately. They presented MVP as if he was going to be this big star. Then all of a sudden you're like, okay, this is never going to happen. He's not a big star at all. He doesn't have the star power, right? And people are like, oh, Matt Hardy should beat MVP and become the world champion. Hold on a second. He should beat MVP and become the U.S. champion maybe, right? Which is what happened. But the notion that Matt Hardy is a world heavyweight champion caliber wrestler is incongruent with reality. It's disingenuous. I love Matt Hardy. I love Jeff Hardy. I love Christian. I love Edge. If we're being honest, Edge is the one that deserved to have the best career because he has the most star power. He just carries himself like a star. Christian is not a star. I think he's 100 times better than Edge, but he's not a star. And there's nothing wrong with that. Not everyone has to be a star. This is not, and that's one thing that I want to make sure that everyone understands. When I say someone's not a star, or if I say someone's a jobber, this is not an insult, right? There's absolutely no doubt in anyone's mind. For example, that Apollo Crews, Cedric Alexander, Dolph Ziggler, Tony Nese, that these guys who are largely jobbers, that these guys can do their job. They're good at their job. That's why they're jobbers, right? No one's saying fire them, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. These guys are never going to be the face of the company. That's the point. Cucks.